Hello, welcome once again. Thanks to attending here to the third panel of the main stage. Remember, by the way, that you have some other stages, Patricia Noticias stage and WFS stage, and you can find on the app what's going on the rest of the stages of this World Football Summit 19. Bueno, bienvenidos al tercer panel del día, en el cual vamos a tener aquí una charla muy chula sobre el futuro y el presente también del fútbol femenino. Recordemos además que si os bajáis también la app hay posibilidad de que veáis también lo que está ocurriendo en los otros dos escenarios de Prisa Noticias y del World Football Summit escenario también, que hay otras ponencias también muy interesantes. In this next panel, we're going to talk about women's football, what is next after the FIFA World Cup held in France this summer, which I think it was a key point in the present and also in the future of women's football. Vamos a hablar del futuro y también del presente del fútbol femenino después del Mundial que tuvo lugar en Francia este pasado verano y que además fue un completo éxito, para saber cuáles son los próximos pasos de esta modalidad de fútbol, que sigue siendo fútbol femenino y que es tan necesario para la sociedad y para el desarrollo de la misma en estos días. We're going to say hello and we're going to give them a great ovation to Patricia Rodríguez, who is going to be the moderator, Ebru Koksal, Laura George, Karina LeBlanc and Rebecca Smith from Copa 90. So, Patricia, welcome. What's the future, the present of women's football? Over to you.
Okay, thank you and good morning. The 2019 FIFA Women's World Cup proved not only the top quality football that women can produce, but also their enormous business potential, with record-breaking media coverage at global reception. There is no stopping the women's game, but how exactly will this momentum be maintained when major brands become new sponsors? For that, we will try to discover the next level for women in sport and the new challenge that we will have with this extraordinary woman that I have here. I will introduce them. I have Ebru Koksal. She is a former investment banker turned into top-level international football executive. Ebru has run the leading football club in Turkey for 15 years. She has worked as a consultant for FIFA, for UEFA also, for the last 5 years, and focused on developing projects in over 30 countries. Next, Laura, Secretary General at the French Football Federation. She hangs up her boots in May 2018. She played in 3 World Cups as defender of the national team. During the last FIFA Women's World Cup, she was the ambassador for the local organizing committee. Karina LeBlanc, head of women's football at CONCACAF. She is 2-time Olympian and Olympian bronze medalist. She has played 5 World Cups, and now she has turned in motivational speakers, brings the importance of why the next steps of women in football. And finally, Rebecca. Sorry.
No, sorry, I was just commenting because she had 5 World Cups. Yeah. It's a lot.
I'm young.
Global Director of the Women's Game at Copa 90. And legendary New Zealand international football. They are the women that are with me, and we will talk about some points about the future of the women's football. So let's start.
Woo! Yeah! Hey, there they are.
This question is for former players, Karina, Rebecca, and Laura. You were football players, and how were your beginnings, and how did you address social barriers when you start playing football?
You go ahead. All right, I've been really lucky. When I started playing football, I was always supported by my family, by my friends. But at the same time, as a player, I was really tough. So whenever I played with men and with boys, they did respect the way I was playing, so they never say, okay, you are a girl, so you are not supposed to play. They were always supporting me because I've been tough. They were respecting who I was, so I have no problem. But on the other side, when people were asking me, so you play football? And I say, yes, I do. They say, but you don't have big thighs.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? So when you are a player, you are supposed to have big thighs, you have to look like a man. So it was kind of not really nice from people telling you, okay, you are an athlete, so you have to be looking like a man. This is how I grew up, with people having like stereotypes.
I used to be the shyest kid in the world, which we were talking about before. Nobody ever believes that now, but I grew up in the Caribbean, where young girls weren't playing soccer, as we call it, they were football. Moved to Canada at age 8, and I actually got invited to a sleepover. And because all my friends were playing football, that's how I started to play. And I went from the shyest kid to one of the loudest people you'll probably ever meet. But it was just because football, because I was finally around like-minded girls, and we've all played against each other, so you'll probably hear us talk a little bit of trash today, but we've all seen the power of the game and how it's changed us. And I went from playing on the national team in Mexican, where there was like 8 people in the stands, to when I retired in 2015 at a home World Cup in Canada, where people were wearing, boys and girls are wearing our jerseys and sold out stadiums. So I went from the beginning to now where the game is, and it's so powerful. So it's all because of the opportunity I had to play a sport, which taught me so many things.
I was born in LA. My parents are Kiwis, so obviously being an American, there were no barriers for me to enter into sports. AYSO, lots of clubs. I played with the boys, then got into a women's club, went to college on a scholarship, and then went to play in Germany, which was when I had my first culture shock, because they were #1 at the time. And when I went to my first game, it was like, well, women can't play. They're all gay. Lots of sort of, I don't know, stereotypes about women's football, which I was shocked by, because they were the best team in the world. And then from going there to Sweden, where obviously it's like utopia, so totally normal that women play. And then from there, worked at FIFA, so saw a lot of the barriers that girls have into entering into football, which totally blew my mind, because coming from America and New Zealand, where it's totally normal, to seeing a lot of different places like the Caribbean or Africa or parts in Asia where it was really hard to overcome those cultural barriers for girls. So I think globally it's still a massive issue in a lot of areas in the world.
And Ebru, how did you lead with the challenge leading a football club like Galatasaray?
First of all, I'll say hats off to these wonderful women who played at international level. Unfortunately, when I was growing up in Turkey, it was unheard of for girls to play football, so I played an equally difficult sport. I was a water polo player, and I do believe in the power of former athletes and their leadership skills. I came into football completely accidentally. The fund that I was working for bought shares in Galatasaray, and I came over as an interim CFO. And the challenges were twofold. First of all, on the business side, the club had just won the UEFA Cup and the Super Cup, but it didn't even have merchandising operations. So how to capitalize on the international and domestic success of the club, make it an international brand again, and also pay down the debt, build a new stadium. So the next decade was extremely challenging for any business leader, whether it was a woman or a man. But of course, being a woman was even more challenging, because we had, during that decade, 6 different presidents and 10 different boards, and each time they came in, it was like, why on earth do we have a female CEO? Wasn't there a guy who should do this job better? But it took them a month usually to figure out that I was really extremely knowledgeable and was doing a great job for the club and its expansion. So just to say quickly, the revenues went from $10–15 million to about $200 million during my term that I was there as the CEO. And then I joined to the board and retreated to more of a strategic position. So business is challenging, the business of football is challenging, but of course further difficulties to survive as a woman.
Okay, you know the beginning of these women's in football, and now I want to remember the beginning of this summit, because 3 years ago, during the first edition of World Football Summit, I've been here in a women's football panel talking about the future of women's football, and in that moment, I couldn't imagine that the football situation, the women's football situation now, would be the situation that we are living now. So I'm very happy to see the evolution, and I want to share my point of view and to know the point of view of Ebru, because she was a year after me in the same panel, in the same meeting, in World Football Summit. And I think that it's interesting to know the main key points that you think that have been important to be in this situation now.
Yeah. I think those of us who were early believers always had faith that we would reach this position, but probably when we voiced our opinion, we were met with skepticism. Nobody expected 1 billion viewers, nobody expected so many sponsors jumping on, and for me what's even more valuable is, I guess, when you have even the taxi driver or a regular person who has nothing to do with football is talking about having watched the Women's World Cup this summer, or how good a certain player is. So I think we've really managed to penetrate the crowds, and that's what is achieving this exponential growth, and I am confident that there is much more to come.
And talking about the World Cup of this summer, I would like to know, from your point of view, Laura, how we could maintain the media coverage after the World Cup?
Sure, so this World Cup has been amazing. It's been great to organize this World Cup. We break records. It's been amazing. So if we talk about the attendance of the games, we were expecting, before we organized the World Cup, to have around 700,000 people, tickets sold during the competition. But at the end of the competition, we were able to sell 1,100,000 tickets. So it's been amazing. Concerning the TV audience, we reached 12 million people on TV for France, United States. We break the record of TV audience for the France-Brazil game with 58 million people on TV. So it was like a world record for women football. So it's been amazing, amazing. So now the question, as you say, is how do we keep up? How do we bring the attention? How do we keep people following the girls on TV, in the stadiums, in the media? So it's a big challenge now. So what we do, we keep, I think, and maybe we'll have your point of view, how do we keep people following the girls and following the games? For us, France, what is important is to keep the media involved. Keep the media involved. So we invite them to the game, we give them all the information that they need. Last game, we had a Super Cup game. It was Lyon against Paris. We had a special event with the media. We speak with them about the evolution of the game. Today, we try to have more girls on TV, to invite them to special programs. But then the basic thing is always for the clubs to work on the image of their women's team too. The federation is working on the image of the national teams, but the clubs need to keep up, to show off their players. Lyon is a really good example. They won the Champions League many times, but they are doing a work to promote the girls through their own TV programs. They are advertising the girls, so they are doing a really good job. So it's like a circle. You need everyone. You need the federation to work, promote the national team, and even continue to develop the women's game and to bring the media around the teams. But the clubs need to do the work, needs to promote the girls. You don't have to hide the girls. And they are cute, so it's not like they are ugly and you have to put them in the locker. No, you have to promote. But also you have to know who they are, because women's football is not just about to be cute. Because you can be ugly and you can be a really good player. Because at the end, this is what matters. You have to understand who are the players, their family, what they live, what they went through. This is what is interesting. Because at the end, people respect who they are and not the way they look. So we have to keep up to make people know who the players are and to keep doing it. Because it's not because you had a successful World Cup that people will continue. You always have to maintain the will to support the girls.
I would love to add to that. Sorry, did you want
You
to
go
say
first.
something? Yeah, no, I mean, if you don't know Copa90, we're a digital platform, but we do a lot of storytelling, always around football, a lot from the fan culture. So when I started about a year ago, it was all about trying to normalize women's football into everything we're doing. And I think, to Laura's point, women's football has always existed, and it's always been amazing, and it's always been beautiful, but it's never really been given the respect it deserves in the media. And now, when we look at the modern fan, how they consume football or sports, or basically anything now, it's quite different. It's a lot more diverse than what we thought it was. It's not just, male decision makers making decisions for a men's game, putting male pundits for a male audience. It's actually much more diverse. People are consuming on their phones, they're doing it through memes, they're on WhatsApp. And I think that the women's game it's much easier to include it in the definition of football when we can go to the digital platforms. But it's all about that continuous storytelling and making sure that people know who these players are. So we're committed to working on that, but also through data and research and making sure that people know that there is an audience for it. 59 million people watching in Brazil, or 1 billion people watching worldwide. That for us is kind of like a duh. But if you're not doing it with amazing quality and the best production you possibly can, then it just perpetuates a stereotype that, oh, women's football is not as good. Oh, it's a lot slower. Oh, the stories aren't as good. Well, yeah, if you don't put as much research into it and you don't put as much care into who these players are and the way that you tell the stories that makes them authentic, then they are going to not be very good stories. So I think there's a lot of investment that needs to be done in all the different forms of media so that people will actually be able to appreciate the game for what it truly is.
And it's interesting, I'm sorry if you wanted to talk, but it's interesting because I could see the change with Nike.
Yep.
If you have to remember, Adidas is the brand of the World Cup, but at the end, when you think about the World Cup, which brand you think of was Nike. Before the competition, they've been doing like a big show around the girls, bringing all the important athletes, women athletes, to a show. To bring the world, this is our athletes, and we are working to develop and show what it is to be a woman athlete. And today, if you are on Instagram, you can see players before the games, they are like advertising the player. So you see the new boots advertised by this type of player from PSG, player from Lyon. So the brands are, okay, we can sell shoes also with the players, but you have to show them and put them on the stage. They can sell it too. Like in France now, we are like expecting 200,000 players. They need boots too. So they need to have like their models to wear them and to be advertised.
I was just going to say, like, the players, I think, have started to understand that they're a platform for something, and much credit to Becca and Copa90, because what they did is they started telling the stories in unique ways. And these players, they're able to articulate the stories, and every single player has a powerful story. And it's interesting because I got to do the World Cup with Fox. So I did the TV, and then we did a Twitter show. And the reach between both of those was 4.8 billion. And it was just presenting the women's game in a unique way. And I think what was interesting is the US-France game in the quarterfinals. At one point, we had 1 billion users tuned in right away because people wanted to know more about these athletes. And like for us, like so our confederation at CONCACAF, we're 41 countries, and the US is one of our countries. For us to maintain that momentum is now putting the challenge onto everyone who's paying attention to the game. So each and every one of you are here right now can impact how this game is influenced moving forward. We have an opportunity, but it's not just the women on this stage, it's you as a sponsor, you in media, and whatever hat you wear, think, how can I actually impact this game to make it better for the next generation? Because the sponsors are stepping up now. They always have. There's been sponsors like Visa and the other ones who have always been around. But like you say, it's no longer just, as Laura was saying, it's no longer just Adidas, but the other brands saying, like, we can own this space too, whether it's through unique platforms, whether it's using a player's voice, maybe not even the biggest player, but maybe the player who'd struggled her whole life. And this moment of just making the World Cup was the most important thing. That's an important story to tell. So I think how we use this and build on the momentum is everybody playing their part for the women's game, showing up and actually doing something rather than just saying that was awesome.
3 years ago, it was very common to consider women's football like a social activity, social responsibility activity in some clubs. But now I think that, as we can see here to our colleagues, I think that we can talk about profitability of women's football. How?
Okay, well, you and I are the finance people on the panel, so let me try to look at it this way. First of all, there's a lot of global debate about whether women's football is generating enough revenues or not. I think it's difficult to split out the revenues that the women's football generates, because up till now, it's been always sold in a bundle, whether it was the World Cup or Euros or regional tournaments or even for many clubs. They were not really putting out women's football as a separate product. So it's very, very difficult to say how much money it's making. And if we look at the audiences, if the numbers that we have seen recently are correct, the global audience for the latest Women's World Cup was about 30% of the audience for the Men's World Cup. So if you do some analogies, the revenues are not the kind of $100, $200 million that people are talking about, but most likely more in the 500, 600, 700 million regions. But again, we won't know that until the separate packages are sold, and the UK has started doing that, and now there are lots of sponsors who are coming in simply only for women's football, and UEFA has now some great sponsorship packages as well. But the way I also look at it is it's a chicken and egg story. Unless you make the investment up front, you are not going to get the revenues that you are hoping for. As my great friends here were saying, the quality of the broadcast needs to be good. The stadiums need to be good. And the stadiums need to be full, because those watching on TV would like to see people on those stands. So, and if you're ever going to make an investment in any industry, in year one, you're never going to make money. This is what feasibilities are about. It's going to take you a few years to be profitable. So we need to see it this way. And it's not enough to just make an investment in the elite level of football. It's a pyramid, and you need to feed the pyramid from the bottom. And grassroots, administrators, coaches, referees, it needs to grow as an ecosystem, and the investment needs to be in the whole ecosystem.
I love that, Ebru, because if we had any entrepreneur that said, well, I'm not going to make money in the first year, then there'd be pretty much no new businesses, would there? The other analogy I love using is if you have 2 seeds and you plant them, one you plant outside in the garden, give it sunshine, lots of water, go talk to it every day, you love it, you give it the attention it needs. You stick the other one in a tiny pot, put it in a closet, don't really give it any water, never go talk to it, no real sunshine. And then 10 years later you say, look at this amazing tree that's giving me all this fruit. And then you go to your closet and you're like, nah, that's pretty much dead. How can you expect the 2 sports to be the same and to produce the same amount of revenue? So 100% I think that the investment needs to be as an ecosystem from the ground up.
So, if we want to continue growing, which are the next steps that we need to make? All of them.
I didn't hear the question, sorry.
The next steps to continue growing.
To grow.
To continue to grow the game, one of the first things is like to bring women into football. Not saying like we don't want men to be involved in women's football, but I think that we need to bring confidence to some women, to get some position in federation, in district, in the leagues, so they can make the decision. Because sometimes if I have to talk about my own experience, you are in a executive committee and you have men around you, so they are like talking about their own projects, and sometimes they forget about the women's game. But if you are involved in it, if you know why you're fighting for it, you are talking about it, and then you explain why it is important. And that's why it's important to have women managing the games, to give them the opportunity to have position, so they will be able to improve the game, because they know what they are talking about. It's important to have women in position, it's important to have women as coaches too, in order to improve the game too, and we need to also have referees, because referees are also impacting the level of the games. They need to have a certain quality, a certain number of referees, but also a certain quality, so the game is growing too. Because the players are getting even better, but if the referees are not at the level, sometimes you don't see a good game. So you have more women in certain positions to make the game grow, and then you still need to grow the base, because the elite, it's nice, but you need to keep working on the base to make sure that you are preparing the next generation. This is really important. And then what is important is like to always bring competition, like nice event to bring people to attend the games. What people like to watch, World Cups, European Championship, Champions League. This is what we
CONCACAF
like.
championships.
Gold Cup, yeah, obviously, yeah.
I'm in Europe, but I'm talking about the World Cup. So this is what people like. And this World Cup has been amazing. So it means that when you organize big events, you bring the attention to the world. And this is what helps people like say, okay, I'm going to follow the girls. Right after a World Cup, I have many people saying, oh, wow, I didn't know this game was nice. And I'm living in France. And I thought everybody knew about women's football. So imagine if you are in Africa. Even in France, people didn't know about the game. So you need to bring games, and you need to bring competition so people are aware and willing to see the game develop.
You know, we were just in Milan, and we had the World Cup conference, and then we got to go to the Best Awards, and you saw, first of all, I don't know if you guys noticed, but the women's best player was announced after the men, and they're standing ovations, and I think this is the time now that people are seeing the shift. But most importantly, I think to add what Laura said, is that we all need to play a part of it. You know, I think that we need to get women in positions, and because I know for me, in my position now, sometimes I'm the only woman at the table, so I get to be a voice for women. But I also think we need to speak with the men and get them to understand that the role that they're playing in this, and making sure that their voices are understanding, whether it's a conscious or subconscious, how are we speaking about women in the game? From a technical point, the World Cup in the women's side is at the best it is, so we need to get more coaches in these positions. I think at the end of the day, how we actually grow it is we all take accountability and play part in it. In whatever position we had, and I know I said this before, but from the referees to the administration side to technical, to all of it, I think we just need to start seeing the momentum, but know that we all play a part in that next step. You know, it's great where it is, it's come a long way, but where we can go, there's so much opportunity there that in whatever position that we all are in today, if we actually say, I can do this and actually do something about it, I think that's when the women's game is really grow, because we need more women in these positions, but we also need men to realize that you guys actually play a big, huge role in this. And the steps that you make, whether it's investment or watching how you see or take things, or think of the young daughter or maybe your sister and what you could do better for her, I think that's how we start to make that shift even better.
Karina, actually to build on what you were saying, at Women in Football, we are an NGO, a small NGO, but with more than 3,000 members in the UK and outside of the UK. And very similar to what you were saying, we launched a great campaign a year and a half ago, and it's very simple. It's called What If? So we're asking individuals and organizations to jump on the bandwagon and not expect everything from the governing bodies like FIFA, UEFA, or the national associations, or the clubs with the big budgets, but everyone to realize that there is something small each and every one of us can do, either as an individual or as part of an organization. So more than 350 individuals and institutions made pledges over the last year and a half. And delivering their pledges is contributing inch by inch to the improvement of not only women's football, but working conditions for women in football. So look at #WhatIf, and if your heart is with us, you know, with women in football, women's football, do pledge something. And it's so easy to be part of this great history writing all together.
For the wrap-up, where do you expect will be the women's football in 3 years? Expectation, desire?
I kind of wanted to answer the last question, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, go back.
Cool. So I think the women's game, and this will get us to where we want to be maybe in 3 years, the one thing that I find the biggest challenge is the perception. So being inside the sport for so many years, we're like, yeah, we know it's amazing. We know it's awesome. We know the quality of the sport is incredible. But people they're not allowed to see it. And they're not allowed to see it in a top quality way. And so I think telling those stories in the right way with the right quality is the best way to motivate decision makers to actually move to action. So what we saw over the World Cup at Copa 90, we did a big study about how you change perception. So we measured audiences before the World Cup and after the World Cup, and through our campaigns and all we did in terms of the storytelling of the players, building out a clubhouse and a physical space for people to come into and enjoy the women's game, we saw that there was a massive shift in understanding of the women's game. And because of the shift in understanding, there was a shift in respect, wanting to do more, buying merchandise, getting involved, and actually now saying that they're going to go and follow their teams locally in the clubs. That leads to more ticket sales, more merch sales, and that's a whole ecosystem that's now growing. So I think what our role is, what our part is telling those stories to get people motivated to actually make change. And I think that's the most exciting part right now that we're involved in, to try to help get more referees funded, you know, to help get more women in football, to help get more support in Caribbean countries.
It's so funny that you said that, because at CONCACAF our 3 goals are to change perception so that we can build foundations and grow participation. Because the reality is we have 41 countries. So we have North America, which is booming, and then we have the rest of our countries where there's a big gap. And like a country like Jamaica, which made its first ever World Cup, it's so important for girls to see a black woman from a young island do what they can do, because you have to see it to believe it. And it's using these women to change the perception across the board to show that anything's possible. And I think that's what's exciting about women's football, is that there's 211 countries, but there's so many gaps in between all of them. And the more that we can tell stories like that, is the more we can change the perception and actually get things moving. So.
Yeah.
Great point.
I mean,
Jesus, she's so good.
But the question at the end is, do women's football will reach the level of men? And I always see women saying, why girls don't get as much pay as men? And I do remember when I was a player in PSG, I was training 5 days a week, 5 to 6 days a week, and the guys were training maybe 3 days a week, going to Dubai, coming back to play, but they were getting paid much more. So today it's like a question of, you don't get money when you invest for women for the moment. It's the will of managers to be in, and the will to promote the game, the will to give opportunities to girls, to say, okay, maybe I won't get the money now, but I'm investing in humans. I know today we are here talking about business and investment and data and bringing money to the company. Women's games today is not about having money right now, as you say. But my will in 3 years will be like to see more top clubs investing with the heart, not just to say I'm going because everybody is doing it, but doing it, okay, I'm giving girls the opportunity to be women athletes, to be considered to be a top level one, or just giving girls the opportunity to be considered as boys. This is the will that I want to see in the women's games tomorrow. But we know that something is complicated for clubs. Today, the clubs, they are like supporting players. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. But then some girls then get to Lyon because there's money. And then the club who did all the formation, as we say in French, don't get that money. So the club are saying, maybe I should not invest in women's football. Because if I was like doing the formation for a man, okay, I have 1 or 2 years, I have a Kanté, and you go to Chelsea, jackpot, I get the money. But a girl, 1, 2 years, she's been using my money to go to school, to play, and then she go abroad, I don't get this money, so we have to work on this. To have this money around for the clubs, to support them, so they are willing to support the girls. We have to bring this to another level, to have not the same model as men's, but we have to go towards this. And I hope we'll have people who are really convinced that they will bring the women's game, not for that money for the moment, but just to give opportunities to girls, really, really. But things will come, because if you want to develop the game, you will make sure that you have people working on the marketing. You will have sure to have people, the media, to follow your team. I always bring the example of Olympique Lyonnais. People think that Jean-Michel Aulas is giving the money and say, okay, just about money. It's not just about money. It's someone who really care about the game. And he say, okay, I'm doing all my efforts to bring the same quality for the girls as I do for the men. We had like good fields, we have good stadiums, a good staff, good kine. Yes, they have money. They have the best and they are winning. But he puts all the efforts. But he also put himself as a real manager for women's game. He's attending the game. He's calling the players. He's close to his team. He's been true to the game. And today he has sponsors coming, investing. Because you see, I'm going to put everything to make sure that the girls are developing. And today the image of the girl is great. And people want to be with the girls and not with the boys. Depend where you want to grow the game. Just depend on where you want to grow. It's not about, oh, I don't get the money, so I don't invest. Sometimes you have to bet. And then you say, this is what we say in management. The people who succeed are the people who don't know what's going on, but they're like, let's do it. Let's bet, and we'll see. But those are the people who are successful, right?
Laura, you know that movie, Field of Dreams? If you build it, they will come. You just made me think of that. So true.
Yeah, I think just to go with what you said, in 3 years, I guess, bigger competitions, more sponsors, but again, the opportunity for the girl who never ever would have dreamed of this chance to now get a chance to kick a football. And I think just more opportunities for girls to dream big, because I mean, we got to live the life, and football changed our lives. They made us a better version of ourselves as women, partners, whatever we do in life. So I think in 3 years, I just want more girls to have the opportunity to play that never would have had it. And that's because of the exposure of the women's game. That's because every event has been bigger. There's bigger club competitions, everything she said. But the most important thing is that that young girl in all of us gets to play football.
And we always need to
Just
be
to
involved in the
maybe
game.
add one last point is, maybe it's not the next 3 years, but the next decade. I have so much faith in Gen Z and the younger generations because their true norths are a little bit different than maybe our generations. They really act with their heart and what is right and just, not to tick boxes of equality or not to say, oh, we need to invest in women's football, but they are true believers of giving equal chance to everybody and supporting those who are doing the right things in terms of either whether it's climate or equality. So I think the shift that we saw in our lifetime in the last 2 decades, you guys as players, me as a longer term maybe administrator in the business, the next decade will probably surpass that past 20 years because the younger generation is going to pick up and become, sponsors, supporters, viewers, fans, and I think the shift will be much faster.
So thank you very much for sharing with us your experience and your opinions. And hope to meet you here in maybe 3 years or in the next decade. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia and the rest of the girls. We have to keep an eye, we have to be concerned of the importance of women's football in the present and in the future. Follow up, we're going to have Kike Levy from Facebook trying to talk about driving business through the power up community. Gracias a Patricia y al resto de gente. En un minutito volvemos aquí en el escenario principal con Kike Levy de Facebook, que nos va a hablar del poder de la comunidad en cuanto a contenidos de fútbol. 5 minutes and we'll be right back here. Thank you very much.